And we are back now. I'm doing a sit-down interview with YSU President, former Congressman Bill Johnson, now that you are a little over a week on the job. Thank you for taking the time.
Hey, good to be with you. Thanks for coming in.
So you've just started. Have you had a chance to understand the scope of your duties and what will be asked of you while you're here?
Oh, well, I always understood the scope. I mean, I've known about Youngstown State for a very long time. It's been part and parcel of my district for the last 13 years, even though I didn't represent the actual physical property up until January of 2023. Many of the faculty, many of the students, of course, many of the staff lived in my district, and I spent a lot of time here at the university talking with President Tressel, talking to others, helping them with projects that they were working on and those kind of things. So I'm not a stranger to the campus, so I knew the scope of the duties.
Have you learned anything new this week, though? Just the first week on the job, anything that surprised you?
Not that surprised me, but that I was glad to see. There's a lot of optimism here. This is a family, and as I met with both faculty, staff, and students, there's a sense of optimism. I was so glad to see that most people here, when they heard what I had to say, they were on the same boat that I am. They're here to move the university forward. You know, Jim Tressel and the board and the leadership team over a 2-year period did a great job of developing a strategic plan, and my job is to build on that. They were a part of that strategic planning process. The entire campus was. They took inputs from all over the campus. So it is an exciting time. And as people got to know who I am, Lindsay, rather than read about it in the newspaper or hearing about it on television, when they got to meet me personally, they were kind of surprised to see that there's a lot more that we have in common and a lot more that we have that we can work on than we have that we need to fight about.
You held a meeting with the faculty union last Thursday. And after that meeting, the union spokesperson told us that it was a productive meeting. They said that you share similar interests. What would be some of those interests?
Well, we're all here for one reason and one reason only at the end of the day. We're here for our students. If it's not for our students, we don't have a union, we don't have faculty, and you don't need a president. We are here for our students. That's what we're here for. And my every day, every waking moment is focused on what do we need to do today to bring in more students and to enhance the experience of the ones that are here. I was asked that question last night by the Student Government Association. What are you going to do? What are some of your plans to help students? And I said, everything I do. Because everything I do is designed around making this experience better for you, because let's face it, one of these days these young people are going to they're going to graduate and they're going to go out into the workforce. They'll be alumni, but they're not going to be here on campus. Then we'll have another generation of students. So how do we prepare each generation of student that comes through here to meet the challenges of today and the challenges that are going to be even bigger tomorrow? We were just talking about how dangerous the world is and how competitive the global economy is. Workforce needs that are shifting like sand under our feet. We have to be agile and adaptable and flexible to make sure that our graduates are prepared and that we're preparing for the jobs of the future.
Was there one specific concept or idea that you and the faculty union still disagree on in terms of changes that would approach that goal, or did
no,
you
we
not
talked
find
about,
any?
I gave them the example just like in Washington, D.C. over the last 13 years when I served with Problem Solvers, the Problem Solvers Caucus. We left our politics at the door, we left our ideology at the door, and we focused on things that we had in common, areas where we could agree. So we didn't talk in that faculty union meeting about things we disagreed on. We talked about the areas that we agreed on.
What's the
How
top
do we-
area that you did agree on? Is there one example you can share with the
How do we
community?
engage with one another? You know, I'm not here to fight with anybody. If we spend all of our time fighting, how does that help our students? You know, certainly we all have a common goal of making this experience good for our students. So let's have a conversation. My door is open. Don't read something in the newspaper and think it's the gospel. Come and talk to me about it. We're not going to agree on everything. This is a business. The university has a responsibility to be accountable to the taxpayers for the resources that we get. We have a responsibility to be accountable to the parents that pay the tuition, or to the students that take out loans and then have to pay it back, right? So we have to be accountable to them. That means we've got to operate this institution as a business, which means we've got to earn a profit. We've got to be able to pay the bills. And so there are sometimes some tough decisions that have to be made. Those decisions will come. I don't have any today, but those decisions will come. You know, Youngstown State is in a great position financially. So my focus right now is on increasing enrollment, bringing in more students from across our region, from across our state, from around the world. Our international program is thriving, it's growing. Our graduate program is thriving and growing. Outreach to our military, both active duty and veterans. Those are some of the things that I want to do, Lindsay, to try and increase enrollment. And then fundraising. A lot of what we do focuses around scholarships and grants and opportunities provided by the foundation for our students. So I'm going to be I am already deeply engaged with the foundation on that effort. Going to be going on a trip this week with the foundation to do some of that.
Okay. In recent Northeast Ohio history, I've seen new university presidents take over. They've faced tough decisions. They've had to make tough decisions in the process. Some of the examples include Kent State's Lester Lefton, who made big budget cuts during 2009 and the recession to fend off what would be a troubling budget. The U of A's Luis Proenza, you may have heard of how he spent big bucks to market the city-based university, to get the name out there for Akron and the students to come there. Other movers and shakers like Jim Trussell, who was just here before you. He brought his backers with him. He helped to grow the university's endowment at a record level. So as you know, and as you mentioned, enrollment is a key goal of yours, and it is no secret public universities and colleges in Ohio are not seeing climbing enrollment at a pace that is out of this world.
And there are reasons for that.
Right. So what will be your approach then to grow the enrollment other than reaching out? Is there a certain message you're going to send or a way you're going to market the university that will be different?
Absolutely. We want everybody that comes into contact with YSU to know why. You've seen our new marketing branding. Know why. Know why YSU is the exceptional place for you. Offer a full suite of programs that meet the workforce needs of our region and beyond. Support our students so that they can pursue their dreams and ambitions on their own terms. Make them successful. If we do that, workforce industry is going to notice, parents are going to notice, people are going to talk about it, and I think you'll see enrollment numbers begin to climb. But we're also going to be casting that wider net.
Yeah, and let's talk about the families in the wider net. I did immediately listen to you. When you said that in the interview, that caught my attention. You don't hear that a lot, except for you're hearing this fight start to take place in other states. You mentioned in our first interview, right after you were selected, you want to be more welcoming of families who do not want their children indoctrinated. Mm-hmm. You said if you discover that happening, you're going to deal with it. So who and what determines what indoctrination is?
I explained that in that interview. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what I said then?
You said that you wanted to know.
Well, I'm going to give you the same answer that I gave then. The difference between educating and indoctrinating is very, very simple. Remember what the first question that I was asked that day. And remember that question about that answer that brought the issue of education versus indoctrination was an answer to a broad question about enrollment. But the first question that I was asked that day, do you remember what it was?
About the selection process.
No, it was not.
On my interview.
No, the press
okay,
the press
okay.
conference,
Yeah.
where I talked about indoctrination versus education. First of all, let me tell you, I haven't seen any evidence. I had not seen any evidence of any of that here. So I wasn't pointing a finger at YSU saying I'm coming in here to fix that here. I'm saying that in terms of enrollment, that's an issue, and let me explain why again. But how that question came up, Lindsay, if you recall, the first question I was asked that day was, okay, Congressman, how are you going to lead this university without your conservative politics and ideology coming into play? Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember my answer?
You said you were going to approach
Every
the job.
president before me had their own political and ideological opinions. The difference between them and me is that I'm an elected official. I didn't have the luxury over the last decade plus of putting my politics and ideology in a box and putting it in a closet where nobody could see it. I had to vote them. I had to speak them. And I did so by voting my values and my principles over the last 13 years and the majority opinion of most of the people that I represent. This is a big district, 800,000 people. Go back and look at the electoral results of every one of my elections, the systematic climb and increase in the number of people that supported me. I voted the way my constituents that I regularly conferred with told me that they believed. Now, that's politics.
And you promised you'd leave that at the door for this role, which you told me.
When I was in
Correct.
the Air Force, we didn't bring politics to work. When I was in business, we didn't bring politics to work. When I was in Congress, we didn't bring politics to work in our day-to-day work of addressing constituent services needs. When someone called our office for help, whether it was a business that needed a permit or an individual that needed help with a federal agency, the IRS, Medicare, Social Security, VA, whatever it was, nobody ever questioned them about what their politics were. And oh, by the way, some of the big, well-known naysayers about my entire selection and the process, they were some of the most frequent callers to my congressional office asking for my help. And we never turned them away, by the way.
My question is more
Hold on.
how would you determine,
Hold on.
other than someone speaking up and saying.
Hold on, I'm getting there. So I was asked about enrollment. We talked about how enrollment was declining. And someone then asked, aren't you concerned that people aren't going to come here because of your conservative politics? And I said, no, I'm not concerned about that. Because enrollment is down from many factors
Correct.
that we don't have any control over. But the two factors, there are some that we do. One of them is that parents and lawmakers want their children to be safe. The other one is they want to know that their children are going to be educated, not indoctrinated. Immediately another reporter said, well, wait a minute, very similar to your question right now. What's the difference between educate and indoctrinate? And it's really very simple. If you expect the president of the university, the leader, the person at the pointed end of the spear, to leave their politics and ideology at home, is it not reasonable and fair to expect that faculty and staff would do the same thing? I think that's fair, right?
I'm not disputing that whatsoever.
Okay, that's what I said. And at the end of the day, we're here to teach our students how to think.
My question is,
Not
as a
tell them
parent,
what to think.
how will you find out if it's happening other than someone reporting
I'm not
it
going to go
you?
out there and look for it.
You won't have
I don't know
someone in
how
a
I'll find out.
classroom, like surveying a classroom.
I'm going to be a
whatsoever.
listener. Every voice in this university will be heard. I have a very, I've been asked, You know, or what about diversity and inclusion? There is no more diverse population in the world than the U.S. military. I've always had a lot of seats, diverse seats around my decision-making table.
Do you expect, though, there to be conflict between what you consider indoctrination and someone teaching their...
I've already answered that question, Lindsay. I'm not going to go any deeper into it. I'm not looking for it. If it happens, I'll address it. I'll know it when I see it. But I'm not going to try to manufacture an answer and say, this is my locked in ones and zeros, unambiguous definition of what is indoctrination.
So you'll take a wait and see approach.
It absolutely is a wait and see approach.
Okay.
I don't have any evidence that it's happening here.
And that was my other question. And I believe universities really are an exchange of ideas, and that's why there is probably a gray area, and you'd like to...
All ideas.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
ideas.
And that's why you may
All
have
ideas.
to approach this case by case.
Oh, absolutely. Because freedom of speech, diversity and inclusion, they are constitutionally guaranteed rights. Freedom of speech is a constitutionally guaranteed right.
Here in Ohio, the state is putting funding into workforce training. Husted's office has really been diligent about this aspect, and I know the university has invested with the credential programs. They want to get everyone workforce ready. And those are really the jobs of the future. That's what the governor's office is touting. The Intel project is one of those big projects where we need people to work in the EV sector, the chip making. So they all go hand in hand. They hope that there will be more feeder market jobs that come in. What is your philosophy then when we just reported on cuts to the Dana School of Music? What's your philosophy for programs to maintain a heavy presence, and which ones could see further cuts? Will you prioritize based on where the job demands are going to be?
You said earlier, I think, God, I had so many interviews, I thought it was you, about, no, it was a previous interview, a previous governor changed the criteria for state funding for institutions to focus more on graduation rates, right?
Okay.
So, and I asked this question last night with the Student Government Association. How many of you in this room understand that Youngstown State University, it's a school, and that's what you're here for, is for your education. And we are so glad that you chose that. But how many of you understand that it's a business? That this is a business. And what do businesses do if they want to survive? They beat the competition and they earn a profit. The only way we can do the things that we want to do are to do the things that we have to do really well. And so we are going to have to make some of those decisions. Youngstown State is in great financial position right now.
Right.
I'm not looking to cut programs, and I'm really not going to discuss any of the program adjustments that have been made. They were made in conjunction with the strategic plan that Jim Tressel and others put in place over the last several years, and it's based on number of staff to graduation rates. And when you've got 12 staff graduating 23 students over 5 years, you tell me if that earns a profit. I'll let you figure that out.
Well, I can
do the numbers quick.
I'm pretty good at math, but I do have some questions about the funding from the state.
Okay.
And how would you potentially build on those credential programs at the same time to get more state funding? Is there a profit there that the state would give you resources and that would be attractive? And could that help keep the whole ship
We're not going to
afloat?
become a junior college.
Okay.
We're not, but we are going to offer programs, right? Credentialing programs in addition to our 4-year programs, hoping that many of those credentialing students will see a light and a pathway to become full-time students. So we're going to do some credentialing, and there's no question about that. That's important to our workforce needs. But as far as state funding goes, I've got some real concerns about the level of funding that's coming to institutions of higher learning. Do you know we've got $400 million of deferred maintenance here at Youngstown State? And that's similar to what the other 13 large university systems around the state have too. Somewhere along the way, now Governor DeWine has done a great job of supporting education. I know because my wife has been involved with many of the boards associated with his education initiatives. So this is not directed at Governor DeWine, but over time, our state legislature and administration have begun focusing so hard on K through 12 education, which is important because that's the pipeline that brings our students to us. That's important too. But you can't do one to the exclusion of the other. We got $400 million of deferred maintenance here at Youngstown State. How much do we get from the state capital budget every year? About $10.5 million over a 2-year period. That's $5.25 million for a year. How long do you think it'll take us to whittle down $400 million in deferred maintenance when not even all of that can go to maintenance? You got to have money to pay for the upkeep and the operations of the university. So I do want to talk to our legislators about looking at the formula for deciding how state and federal funding is allocated and what it's allocated for.
Okay. The YSU Foundation alumni, they are, like you mentioned, a crucial pillar. You are trying to work on your relationship
Right.
with them, and word of mouth is a powerful thing. I know some alumni were upset that you were selected, some students upset, and you and I have discussed about the hiring process and how you didn't want to discuss it in detail, but the trustees, they've refused to hear even some of the students out in some cases. I think there's been some frustration at some of those meetings. But how will you repair some of those relationships? Will you try to repair
Let them
the ones?
get to know me. I started last week. I had a meeting with the Foundation Board of Trustees. The feedback that I have gotten from a number of the Board of Trustees, and I'm engaging with them today, I will continue to engage with them. When they get to know me, I know many of them, by the way, but when I get to know them and they get to know me, and they understand that what they've read about me in the paper or seen about me on television in news reports is not necessarily who Bill Johnson is and how he really leads, there's a different attitude. So it's going to take work on my part. Trust is something that is earned. I don't expect them, based on what they've heard, I understand why some of them feel the way that they do, because they only know what they've heard. When they sit down and have a conversation, I hope that they see a different path forward.
I have a question about the downtown area. This
Yeah.
is a whole different aspect of your job somewhat.
Right.
I know you're going to be a leader in this process, a lot like Tressel was.
Mm-hmm.
He came from Ohio State, University of Akron, where they have had a lot of economic development surrounding the universities. We've had a lot of construction in our area, new businesses move in. Do you plan to build on that, spend more, support more? What will be the university's role in moving that forward, or is there no money for that?
Well, that's kind of a case-by-case basis too. But I can tell you that I was involved in most of the projects to refurbish downtown, even in my previous role. Had many meetings out here with Jim Tressel and the local officials, state officials, and others, bringing in federal grants to bolster some of these projects. We'll be looking to do some of the same kinds of things going forward. We have that program in Congress, the appropriations process, called the Congressionally Directed Community Investment Programs. You can better believe that we're going to be putting our best foot forward to try and get our fair share of federal investment dollars into our downtown area.
Would there be anything new that you know of so far? Any projects?
Haven't heard it. Well, the Kilcawley Center is the main renovation project, and if we can find a way to connect downtown more to the campus and vice versa. You know, I don't have any specifics that I can reveal today, but I've already begun having conversations with the Chamber of Commerce and with the business community about how we can bridge that. Because I can certainly see the day when businesses and patrons to downtown are making their way to campus, when students are making their way downtown on a regular basis, and we want to figure out how to facilitate that.
Will that be something you try to do more of, because the competition, like you said, this is a business model.
Yeah.
That's how you're approaching this job.
Absolutely.
When you try to compete with OU or Kent, they have already done a lot of that work.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you look, and I hate to compare us to Ohio State. Ohio State is like 5 times
Right.
bigger than Youngstown State is, and they're about 5 times bigger than everybody else is too. So we're not unique in that regard. Look how far the Ohio State campus is from downtown Columbus. Does it feel like you're disconnected? No, you don't, right? So we can do this. We can do this. Part of it is attitude. Part of it is infrastructure and you know, brick and mortar. Some of that's got to take place too. But part of it is attitude. I can tell you, without Youngstown, there is no Youngstown State. Without Youngstown State, there is no Youngstown. And if we both, the business community and the faculty, staff, and administration of this university, focus on one thing, we'll make the right decisions. Bring the students here. I want every university in this state, in our region, to be looking at Youngstown State through the windshield, wondering what in the world is happening there that we're not doing.
And one last question, then how do you market? What programs will you put on a pedestal to get their attention?
Still trying to figure that out. Our graduate program is growing. Graduate degree program is growing. Our international program is growing. Give us some time. I think you're going to see our enrollment figures grow too. That's certainly my hope.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for taking my questions.
You are welcome. Thank you.